Well, the button says it's live, so it's live. It's Monday. How y'all doing? Yes, thank you. Good to see you. Thanks for joining in, and we'll just get this in the background. And I'm thinking about getting a low level where you can't really hear it, but it's there. Vibration going in. Put it in that nice harmonics. So good to see everybody. How are you doing? Trust that you had a great Saturday and Sunday, and that life is going good. And if there's challenges, like there's not, ever not, always be triumphant. And sometimes even failure, when it seems like failure, is actually success. So anyway, invoking favor upon everyone this fine day. I hope you're doing good on this Monday. Hello, Nina the Mystic. Hey, folks, we're a tight group here. There's a regular group that meets here Monday through Friday. And I was wondering why I haven't seen some people. Lost in Space was the person's handle. Apparently, they have been blocked. I don't think any of the moderators know anything about that. Hello, auto moderators. How you doing? Hello, good to see you. Hey, Lois, good to see you, dear. Barry, and anyway, this person went on to write, and it's Tony, and I hope we get Tony back in here. I don't understand this. It says, apparently the situation is YouTube has blocked me from your channel. I'm starting to hear this from other chatters that this is what is happening. I don't know if you can actually do anything about it to unblock us. Well, I'll do on my end, and moderators, if you have that ability, by all means. I don't understand this. This is nuts. Just to let you know, I love your teachings, and thank you, Tony. And I know you've been with me from the very beginning. I'm going to see what we can do about checking this out, because this is wrong. I mean, the games, who'd imagine, that the most fearful thing is free speech. Yikes. This is like our friend Jeffrey Doherty over there. They couldn't handle him on the station, the radio. Free thinkers. I mean, listen, a lot of people like to think they're free thinkers, but it's when you get in an environment where you really express free thinking, you find out. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody this week here in America and wherever you may be in the world. Thanksgiving be unto you. We all got a lot to be thankful for. I don't believe in some old dude with white hair and white beard sitting on a throne. But hey, I am thankful to Earth, that her abundant resources has allowed me to live, these 23,000 plus days on her real estate. And to me, I think that's pretty cool. And, sometimes thankful for favor. Lots to be thankful for. Tomorrow, Kenneth Humphreys, going to be fun. This gentleman, you really don't want to miss this. I think you're going to find his research on why there's absolutely no evidence of any kind of a Jesus. I'll let him tell his story. So that will be on tomorrow. Good stuff all the way around. Looking forward to it. I've been working with Kent to get a time that he could get on, and well, here it is. So I'm thankful for that. Anyway, so let's get everybody back on here. I don't understand how someone is blocked, but hey, I think that's happened to me. So yeah, it's like, what the heck? I don't think it's a human either. I think it's an algorithm, that a human, or should we say golem? Yeah. You know, Jeff and I were talking about that yesterday, and had someone send me a great article on the foundation of the theory that if you look at the two different stories that everybody in the world is familiar with, you know, the first people, and we went through this, and we're going to continue study on this Adam and Eve study. This is all inclusive. What we're going to be talking about today, it's amazing how it fits in, but I digress. So that the first people were not made of the earth. The second ones were. And the difference between the first and the second was there was a singularity, and then there was I think this was an amateur, because you went from the single noun of God to Lord God, and clear distinction. And this Lord God didn't have the power that the God had, so they made a golem. And we know this because if you read in verse 9 of second chapter of Genesis, that he said it breathed into it, gave it a soul. The first group didn't get that. And of course, we're discussing cataclysms. Had the delightful opportunity this weekend to chat with some people, and when you introduce people for the first time into the cataclysm history, this is not a theory, it's history. It's well documented in the earth itself, and how these cataclysms that come with regularity, just kick our butts. That's the problem. When you tell people that the fact that, a species didn't have but less than 10,500 years, that was the max that we've been given thus far, that they've dated back at least to the last 10 cataclysms. 10,500 years was all that group of humanids, bipedals, whether they were Homo Neanderthalis, who knows? Sapiens. It becomes a real question now. When did the subspecies come in of Homo, man? Which cataclysm dictated the emergence of that subspecies of man, of which sapiens are? We are a subspecies. I think technically it's sapiens sapiens, which means there's been something else that's happened. We can pretty much tell by the earth that there was an event 5, maybe 6,000 years ago. Something happened. We know the cataclysm hit us. And each time we literally come up out of the mud. Man, everything lost. His whole consciousness shattered. We don't think about this because we're very foolish as a species. We just are. We make lots of mistakes over and over again. But the thing about it is, when you think about the Adam and Eve story, the Unapistine story, which wrongly was stolen, and people know as Noah. There never was a Noah. Get that out of your head. It's a made-up story. They stole the story. If they could be taken to court today, they would be sued for plagiarism. So get the name right. Unapistine. That's the main character. But in any case, I digress. So when this reset happens, it happens over and over and over again. You can get your freaking self dizzy going back and looking at this. But when you frame it into the fact that apparently some sort of mankind, some version of mankind was able to survive And odder yet, there seems to have been an emergence of other races at the same time. And then you think about it. There, for the first couple hundred years, those humans, it was hell on earth, literally. We also know another strange phenomenon happened. There were animals, creatures, other species that today modern man cannot accept, will not accept, and to his own demise will not recognize. But there are those in the science community who do know. And so we look at these stories. So now, if you have a conversation with someone who's still heavily indoctrinated in a religious belief, if you start saying, well, yeah, but look at this as a point, and you know, it's right there. The whole story is right there. This is a story about a post-apocalypse, a post-cataclysmic cataclysm. It's what it is. And in our memory, and our memories don't go too far back, but in the collective consciousness of the collective, we know of two. And it's well played out in a lot of various beliefs around the world. And if in the Western side of that equation, you know it as two distinct, different events. We were foolishly, as children, believed that some deity could really actually do this. I mean, come on, make a planet. I mean, seriously. Now, I believe that you can set the chemistry, the natural laws of nature itself into motion, where the natural result will be a planet, a star, solar system. I just think it's a knowledge and a technology we just haven't grasped yet. But in any case, so if we could take the deity aspect out of it and begin to look at this as basically mankind's on its own. History shows that. No God has ever stopped any one of these cataclysms. And in order to cover that up, what theology did was to come in and blame it upon the man. I have something to back that up. When we talk about man, isn't it interesting that as you study the Abrahamic theologies and their derivatives, it's really interesting how they view man. Now, this is, to me, the epitome of racism against us as a species. Get this. It says, let me bump this up because I've had some people who like to read along. The origins of evil are the same as the root causes of all mankind's problems. You ready for them? Ignorance, prejudice, apathy, hatred, envy, jealousy, and greed, which arise from within man because of his Yazira Hara, I think that is his evil inclination. Remember these words here, because what it's saying is that it is us. And we're being faulted for not being perfect, when the evidence clearly shows that perfectness does not exist other than a fanciful, imaginative, foolish idea of man. I've asked the question, what do you do after you reach perfection? What's left? If you're an intelligent being, What do you do after perfection has been achieved in everything? It would seem you die. There's nothing else. There's no challenges. There's nothing to work towards. But yet, it's an indictment used against our species, against these demigods, these made-up deities. As I've said before, no God has physically manifested before humanity and never will. Well, know why? We'll kill it. We would literally kill it. And if it was a God, it would have to get the hell out of Dodge. I know. Let's go on. Evil arises from ignorance about Yahweh's instructions. Well, let me tell you about Yahweh. We Jeffrey and I have talked about this many times, and this guy is a rat bastard, to use the term from the Christian whistleblower. He is. It is. Bloodthirsty. Anyway. From Yahweh's instructions, ethics, and morals. Isn't it odd that the Yahweh itself cannot live to its own instructions, ethics, and morals? It violates it all the time. Oh, well, we're not supposed to point that out. A lack of sympathy, compassion, and empathy for your neighbor, and lusting after more than one deserves and needs. That is the terminology you use for a slave. You see, a free man, you're not going to tell me what I deserve and what I need. As a free man, I have the cognitive, sovereign ability to self-determine what I deserve and what I need. I don't need some unseen, only by a book that had to have been channeled, something that's given instructions that itself has proven it cannot live up to, which makes it a hypocrite, a liar. Now we know where imperfectness arises from, but let's go on. No, because see, it turns the tables. Evil, and that's what Lilith, and we're about to revisit Miss Lilith. Evil is manifested through the behavior of man, but yet it exists beyond the realm of actions. Well, time out here, partner. What do you mean it exists beyond the realm of actions? Which realm? How far? What realm are we talking about? Goes on, it says, it exists in the heart and mind of every man and woman. Can you explain to me why you would want to worship that? It says that you aren't worthy. You are a slave, and you cannot follow instruction. Therefore, you will be punished until you learn obedience. And the kicker is this: as long as mankind exists, you will find the evil inclination within him. It is a matter of man's free choice and exercising the gift of free will. Oh, no, wait a minute. See, this is classic coding. This is classic spell incantation. Because now, you see, the foundation and the premise of the indictment is this: you are inherently flawed. You are contaminated. You are imperfect. And you have no excuse because you had free choice and free will. Well, let me ask you something, Yahweh. If you are this all-knowing God, then you know the future, right? And so if you know the future, the script has already been written. It doesn't matter what the actors do. Explain to me how that is free will. Now, it goes on to paint a paradigm here. It said life is simply about increasing the level of light in the world by tearing away the veils that create darkness. Well, what veils here? And now are we talking, obviously we're talking something not physical here, but must be either spiritual or metaphorical in building character. Goes on to say there are two principles of life, light and darkness. Darkness comes in various shades and light comes in countless colors. At the center of everything is either light or darkness. Our emotion, you see the duality that's already been set up here? And this is the problem. It's the ubers. You're going to chase your tail. Our emotions, state of mind, consciousness, and every event in our lives are merely manifestations of either the light or the darkness that we have invited into our lives. These negative or positive emotions and events are the effect of, and the light or the darkness is the cause. Think about this, folks. What did you just hear in that last sentence? These negative or positive emotions and events are the effects, and the light or darkness is the cause. That is hermetics. That's the second principle. And this is what permeates most philosophy and theology. It's why it's difficult when we actually come across other documents that lend themselves to be more of, well, a counterbalance to it. And that's the problem. I mean, the insanity of this is that it appears that we have an imperfect perception of what God is, based upon human personification of emotion and actions, and that somehow or another we elevate those personifications to a point of perfectness when in fact it's flawed. And then we begin to condemn ourselves because we can't reach it. Never designed to reach it. How do we know this? Well, how many of you were with me and the rest of the group when we did our adventure with Lilith? Donald Tyson's when he brought forth the Liber Lilith. Does that now mean more to you? Those of you who never got to watch it should go back and watch it. But I want you to pay particular attention, because today we're going to get into the book that, very short book, the book of Lamech of Cain, and understand something here that is really odd. But anyway, we know that with Lilith, Lilith taught us a different form of being, a different story of how the earth came about. And everyone knows about the Steiger name that's associated with this. I think Nick just got in over his head, literally, no pun intended. I think he just made a mistake. So Lamech is the central antithesis, not the antithesis, the progenitor of the story here. And it is he that when he met Lilith, fell in love with her, lusted after her, and there's good reason, because in our book here, we find out that Lamech is, well, he ain't have tapping. Women were very scarce after the cataclysm that brought the Adam and Eve story into the consciousness of mankind. And which, I guess in one way would make sense. I don't know. And the problem for nearly the first, as you read this, the first 400 or 500 years, women hid. There was, this blatant rape on a wide scale. And that's why when they started erecting temples, they brought forth the temple prostitute. The reasoning was far better for a man not to take out the anger. And seriously, men back then, people back then were mean sons of bitches. That's all I can say. So this is Lilith. She is dictating to Lamech of the true story. And, you can't help but not fall in love with Lilith. I mean, she was screwed, not only by the very deity itself, but by man. And we get into this whole thing. How did Eve conceive Cain? If it's not in Adam's bloodline, then how did that happen? Well, we know the story. We won't get into it here, but this just brings back some fond memories. I do enjoy reading what Lilith said, and if you've got the book, you should go back and read the story. And because you see, there were different races of humanids, people. This is but one story, as the book Adam and Eve and the history of Cataclysms said. It's just one story. The Naga told us this. This was a story about a particular man named Adam. And the world was a wild and crazy place, folks. Now, the thing is, when we read about the actual formation of man from Lilith's story, Adam was a golem. Now, he was copied after, Lilith says, from what we call the Jerodama, the heaven Adam. And anyway, check this out. I did the whole story on this. In fact, we might even review that ourselves. But in any case, so I'll give you the background because I can't find this in PDF. What I am going to do is make some copies of this literally and combine them into it. But so Lamech lived in the city of Enoch. He was born, in fact, I have actually put together so Lilith, she's still here. All right, so our story is taking place 2 cataclysms ago, the second to the last, not the one that we know as the Great Flood. It also appears to be, and I looked at this from an anthropological point of view, the emergence of sapiens. Isn't that interesting? So we were just talking about Lilith. This is the book of Lamech of Cain. Cain is the central character here because, as you can see in this, Adam and Eve, we know that Eve was Adam's daughter, birthed by Lilith, which gave Eve, and then it gets really weird here, but in any case, so here we know that there were other sons and daughters. That's the great mystery that's passed up, and even in the Christian Bible, even in the Hebrew Bible. Well, they don't have a Bible, but you understand. The Torah. There were other sons and daughters that we have no records of. Why? This is a post-apocalyptic world. This is not a perfect world. This is a world that is recovering from a major upheaval. Now, if you look in here, Cain then gave birth to Enoch, Irad, Methuselah, Lamech, who gave to Jubal, Tubal-Cain, and look at the name down there, Nahum. Now, Nahum plays a key central point on this. She is Lilith, calls it her daughter. Lilith sought her out in the Liber Lilith. And when you find out what Nahum did with the Raphaim, whoa, this was, this girl knew how to party. And she apparently liked things big. I'll just leave it at that. So the stories are out there. The Exile of Cain. In the book, Cain is actually touched with leprosy. It's called the whiteness of the skin. And Lamech tried, in fact, most of his life, tried to worship this God, this Elohim. And this Elohim was one cold-hearted. I mean, it's just freaking brutal. So Lamech began to figure some things out. It was like, now, wait a minute. The story of Seth was one that he wanted to learn more about. And, you know, when we look at Seth, and then you carry that over to the Egyptian Book of the Dead, this is Set, and you can take it from there. It says that Lamech prayed to the God of Adam fervently in secret, but because of the mark of Cain upon him and the land he was in, the God of Adam chose to not look at Lamech, and when he did, he cursed him because of the mark. Wow. You want to know where we get racism, bigotry, prejudice? They taught us. It went on to say that Lamech did not rape, and he did not steal. Lamech did not turn his body over to the spirits. The spirits. Folks, these are us. I mean, they're most likely fair-skinned people. Some say dark skin. I don't know. I have a sense maybe somewhere in between. But anyway, he said he did not give his body over to the spirits or the giants for defilement. Lamech would not enter in the temples for pleasure or drink any of the potions that were offered to him. Lamech did not worship the sons of gods. These were the giants, as the others did, for the sons of God practiced divination, spells, resurrection. Found that an interesting word. They practice resurrection. Think about that one. that were unknown to Lamech. And then the word that they translate, by the way, this came from apparently the archives, apparently the secret vaults of the Vatican. The two priests, they give their story and their testament of how it came into their hands, and they spent a very long time actually translating this. So Lamech went to Methuselah. Well, we know that Methuselah was apparently the longest lived one of us. But Methuselah did not answer his questions. He thought to see the descendants of Seth. Well, they would have nothing to do with the descendants of Cain. They wouldn't even look at them. So the interesting story is that there were many other people. Apparently, if you read this hellish land, there were other groups of survivors that weren't of the story of the man of Adam. And that brings in a whole different story. So Lamech, he became friends with a giant named Yuval, the Raphaim. And Yuval taught Lamech how to command the great Leviathan of the sea. And it's quite fascinating. It says that Lamech met Yuval, the giant, while walking the desolation of the land. The land was desolated, folks, and this is an accurate description of what a post-apocalyptic world would look like. It said that Yuval's way as a giant was tender, gentle, and delicate. And with Lamech, Yuval the giant was both kind and humble. Yuval's peaceful ways were different than the other giants in the land. Because of his nature, Yuval and Lamech soon became bound together in close friendship. Yuval the giant loved Lamech as much as he did his own life. Strange story about the giants here. Because the story that has been portrayed, and accurately so from what other books I've read on them, they ate humans, very mean, cruel. And by all indications, they apparently ruled for well over 1,000 years on the planet, which leads us onward to our story. So I always love how the medieval painted things. I mean, you could check this painting out and you just scratch your head going, what the freak is going on here? I don't have any idea what the cherubim are doing down there. None. I mean, other than it looks like they're beating the crap out of something, I don't know. And what the hell is that? Is that a sheep that thing is mounting? Or, well, wait a minute, it's got a human, it's got an ET's head on it. Check it out, folks. Look at it right down there, lower right-hand corner. Yeah, not reality. But let's talk about Leviathan. Now, whether you're studying the Kabbalah, whether you're studying, Hebraic, ancient religion, comparative religion, the story of dragons, of the great sea monsters, are everywhere. It's not with the Jews. It's not with the Mesopotamians. It's everywhere. Men were sailing upon the seas for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And the creatures that they would meet out there are today what our legends are about. Now, the interesting thing about this was that it says that Yuval took Lamech to the edge of the sea, and there they saw Leviathan coming up out of the sea, having 10 horns upon its head. Well, where do we get this 10 horns at? Yeah, baby, they borrowed it again, right back there to the book of Revelation. Yeah, they can't come up with an original. Why would you? When you got the best original that's really there. It says, and Leviathan was broad on both sides and great, and Lamech and Yuval, the giant, were small in his midst, and looked up to Leviathan. Great flows of water arose like a storm. Leviathan was large as a mountain and covered with earth, plants, trees, and Lamech and Yuval, the giant, stood in awe of him. And his female, yes, female, was with him. For the movement of Leviathan was a big disturbance, and all who were about knew his coming. In other words, almost like a tidal wave. It says when it spun up out of the water, it literally created a whirlpool that went up into the sky. It said Leviathan was a large sea creature that was also seen on land. And Yuval provided Leviathan with ample food, saying, Leviathan, you will have the life of for many a years to come. Take your ease, eat, drink, and enjoy yourself. Now, here's the thing, folks. Number one, the Leviathan ate the carrion, the dead bodies. The other thing was that, as Lamech began to train this dragon fell in love with Lamech. Well, the fact that Lamech had command over it, but it became very loyal. And from that time on, it would walk with the giant, Yuval, and Lamech. And the beast, and they said that they were big. And it said, the Leviathan protected Lamech on every side from the perversions of the land, and the lions and great wild beasts of the old stayed away from Lamech and his lands. And it was so that if Lamech clapped his hands together, that the Leviathan would kill whom Lamech instructed. Interesting, is it not? Now, so Lamech's son, Tubal-Cain, was a blacksmith. He worked with the ores. And now he became jealous of the male Leviathan that had served his father, Lamech, and terrorized man on earth, and kills it only to be killed by the female Leviathan. And the story goes that Lamech thought he could approach God because the way that he considered himself to be a pure man. Hadn't really done anything wrong. He tried to worship him, both him and the giant, Yuval, both in secret, observed all the traditions of Seth, how Seth worshiped this God, and considered their worship of God, the Lord, as profane. Again, this Lord God wanted nothing to do with them. Now, this is the interesting thing. They described the earth as hell, is what they said. It was hell. Get this. It said that the darkness and the living among the wickedness of the line of Cain caused the evils of Lamech and Yuval to grow and smolder in their hands as it was at the time. Both Lamech and Yuval the giant would then lay their smoldering hands on the beast and leave their sins upon the animals. Yeah, you got it. The scapegoat, right? And the beast would die as the evils were imparted on and to and upon them. And it came to be that when the sinful burdens of Lamech and Yuval the giant were great, the animals would burst into flames from their sinful touch. Now, so Lamech begins to actually provide enough things that were this Leviathan. And by the way, on the land, Leviathan was the dragon. They literally lived. It's always been a mystery because I've studied and studied their origins. And it wasn't until actually I started putting this book together along with the Liber Lilith that we begin to find out that the Leviathan is the dragon. And as the story goes in here, they started worshiping the dragon. I kid you not. Are you seeing how this has been incorporated into the modern religion mindset? And Leviathan would breathe fire. They mated the Leviathan, the male and the female. It's really interesting. We're not sure what happened. I believe they're still here. I absolutely am convinced. And I think that this magnetic pole shift could very well be, listen, nothing's new under the sun. So they started worshiping it, started speaking about each of the 10 horns on it, saying that whoever would not worship the dragon would be put into the place where the dry waters of the great deep, holding them within it. So interesting enough, today it was announced that they have found the bones of what they call a dinosaur, a dragon. Now, it's not the same dragon that is obviously, as we saw in the movie of The Hobbit, of Smaug. However, Peter Jackson and crew did their homework. And actually, Smaug is the tiny one. Yes. The Anglican, the black dragon, is a dragon they say can cover a complete country. I believe that these creatures are still here. I think in their nature of what they do, they're hibernating. As very plainly seen, I think they are still alive. There is a saying that says, "What was shall yet be again." And if you read many of the accounts, it's very plain that there was something else going on here. There were different creatures. There were different species, humanoids. It talks about the fact that there were places that you just did not want to be a part of. Magic, incantations. So now you've got Lamech. Lamech has now got a dragon that lives with him. He became powerful and rich. I bet. I mean, could you imagine the stories? Did you hear about the land over there? Well, what about it? That damn guy's got a dragon. How to Tame Your Dragon. There you go. So Leviathan would also wreak terror in the oceans. which began to tell me that I think that there were offsprings of these things. So I want to get, in the time that I've got remaining here, to get to Nahum. Now, by the way, Tubal Cain does kill the male dragon. Tubal Cain, he had made a weapon. And he killed the male, but the female killed him. Now, interesting enough, Lamech had 2 wives, and they were mean bitches. That's all I got to say. It's just mean. And they were driving him crazy. He would go out and sleep with Yuval and the dragon. He said he preferred their company than the 2 wives. Anyway, the 2 wives started, they weren't being satisfied. And so they started, bringing the younger guys in. And Lamech found this out, and he realized that you can't love 2 women at the same time. Well, there's a piece of advice that today still isn't brought forth. So Lamech comes back with this weapon that Tubal Cain had made to slay his dragon. I mean, Lamech was pissed. I mean, he spent a long time, building the trust relationship with the dragon. Anyway, he came in and found Zilla and Ada messing around. And anyway, it says this, with one fell swoop, cut them in half. But now I want to talk about something that Zilla. Now, it is said here that Zilla gave birth to Nahum. But actually, we know in the Liber Lilith, which I was just showing you, Lilith says, no. Lamech spilled his seed in me, and I gave birth to Nahum. And Nahum became basically Lilith's right-hand person. We know how evil this woman was by her story. And all the succubuses and the incubuses that are out there stealing the sexual elixir of both male and female humans. Very powerful stuff. You guys just, I couldn't teach it on YouTube. They wouldn't allow it. But there is power in the sexual fluids of each of us. Anyway, so in this story, Lamech says that he had a daughter by his wife Zilla named Nahum. Now, Nahum, this girl knew how to potty. So she was apparently very attractive. She did not have the mark of Cain, which, by the way, is leprosy. It's what it grew into. But so Lamech had warned her about the sons of God, the giants. And he said, you need to stay away from them. They got bad mojo, man. Those people, they really do practice magic, and it works. And she basically said, screw you, Dad. I'm going to go and going to join a rock and roll band. And so she picked up her shit and, she moved in with the sons of God. And holy deal. And I'm going to read you exactly what this said. So if some of this offends you, well, I didn't write it. It goes way before any of us were born. It says, and Nehemiah was seduced by those whose genital organs were the size of a beast of the field, and whose ejaculation was that of a horse. And Nehemiah lusted after the sons of God, and Lamech and Tubal Cain, Jabal and Jubal, all gnashed their teeth and ground their jaws and dreamt of death and revenge upon the Nephilim. And Naamah did worship the sons of God, as was the practice at the time, and she did practice divination, spells, and resurrection with them. Yeah, I bet there was a resurrection. And the men, and men in that changed into beast. Get this, folks. This is so weird. And men changed into beast, and beast changed into men. And men yielded to the beast and the birds to lie with them, and the men were raped mightily. And those between the land of the dead and the living that mated them as well. Clear indication that there is a spirit form that can, in fact, have sexual intercourse with humans. And the Gon Tawaka was among them, and men came into the beast, and the beast came into men, and the earth groaned for all the sexual deviancy. And Naamah chose to lay with them, and they treated her as a whore, and she became a whore of the daughters of Cain. And the price for the imperious whore was the price of a loaf of bread. And all the sons of God committed fornication and lived deliciously with her. For Naamah was both a deep ditch and a narrow pit. And as a whore deriding a gift, she mocked Leviathan openly. Now, it's getting up to this hour. I told you this is deep stuff, folks. I ain't kidding you. The thing is, Naamah in this story marries Noah, Unapiston. Now, wait a minute. Did we not read in the book of Genesis that Noah and his wife were of the pure blood? It says in this book, they chose not to tell Noah about Naamah's party time. Felt it was best that, she had pretty much cleaned up her act, and, she was going to go for the white picket fence and, the two dogs and, and we wonder what's wrong with our species. Regardless of whether you believe the story or not, it's a different type of story. And there's another book that goes with this. I'm getting that. And as we continue to study the Adam and Eve story and Cataclysms, folks, this makes perfect sense. There was a different time back there. I contend there was a different sun, probably a different atmosphere, different life beings, creatures of things that, we can only think they're fantasy. But Naamah, woo, I told you that girl knew how to party. Man, I'm going to tell you what. I think she, you get this whole thing in your head going, now, how did that work? I don't know. Okay, so folks, join me tomorrow for Mr. Kenneth Humphreys. I'm looking for that. Trina and I are going to try to get together. I'm going to try to see if we can get on together on Friday. This week being Thanksgiving, it kind of messes things up. But anyway, wild stuff, isn't it? I mean, and this is why we learn. This is why we read. This is why we seek to discover. This is not going to be taught in any Sunday pulpit, I can assure you this, or in any temple. Oh, no. We can't do that. But anyway, all right, folks, you have to admit, this was really good. And just want to say hi to everybody. All of you are so great people. I just really appreciate you, all the moderators, everyone that joins us here every day. At least we can say one thing about our group. We're well versed. And we could hold our own in any eschatological or theological or philosophical discussion. Doesn't matter what Jung or anyone else said, Freud or the rest of them. What really comes to matter is where you are. How did you get to where you are? Are you finding yourself? Are you finding answers? For me, this is making so much sense. I mean, we don't have the whole story. I get that. But if I look at this as simply us getting our butts kicked in these consistent cataclysms, it makes perfect sense. I mean, I feel like we're on a broken record, and somehow or another, wouldn't it be nice if we could just get onto a planet that would, be stable? I don't know. I don't know if that's even possible. All right, folks, have yourself a great evening. I will see you tomorrow, and thank you again. I dearly do appreciate all of you. And, I feel like you're, I could say family, friends. But yeah, way to go. All right. We'll see you later then. Bye-bye.